I've heard about the dark web. Who hasn't? People talk about it like it's some sort of digital hell where the worst of humanity hides in the shadows. Drugs, weapons, hitmen. It's the kind of place where every nightmare you've ever imagined has a price tag. But I never thought I'd end up in that corner of the internet. I thought it was just stories. You know, something you talk about at a party to sound edgy. I was wrong. Dead wrong. It started on a random Friday night. I was bored, scrolling through Reddit as usual, and I stumbled upon a thread about the dark web. People were sharing their experiences, real or not, about what they had seen. Most of it seemed like BS, honestly. A lot of talk about weird videos, shady deals, and hackers messing with people. The curiosity got to me, though. I couldn't help myself. I've always been the type to push boundaries. Besides, how bad could it be? It's just a corner of the internet, right? I downloaded Tor and started exploring. It was a slow, creepy process. The interface was clunky, like the internet back in the early 2000s. I clicked through a few harmless forums at first, just getting a feel for it. Then I came across a chat room. It didn't have a name, just a bunch of random numbers and letters for a URL. People were chatting, but there was something off about it. The conversations weren't like anything I'd ever seen. People weren't asking for drugs or weapons. No, they were looking for victims. The room was full of people posting names, pictures, even addresses, like some twisted Craigslist for human prey. My gut told me to close it, to back out before things got worse, but I didn't. I watched. I scrolled through the chats, feeling this mix of disgust and fascination. It was like I was watching a train wreck. You know you shouldn't look, but you just can't help it. Then I saw it. Someone posted my name, my full name. My heart stopped. What the fuck? I whispered to myself, staring at the screen. There it was, clear as day. My name, my age, my city. Then a few seconds later, a picture. My picture. Taken from outside my house. That's when the panic set in. I stared at the screen, trying to figure out how the hell they got that photo. I never posted anything that could link to my home. How did they know where I lived? The chat was moving too fast to follow, but as soon as I saw my picture, people started responding to it. They weren't talking like normal trolls. They were discussing me, what they wanted to do to me. It wasn't just talk about stalking or hacking my accounts either. It was sick, twisted shit. The kind of stuff you read about in horror stories but never think can happen to you. The messages escalated quickly. He looks soft, easy prey. I bet he cries real pretty. Let's fuck him up. My throat tightened. I slammed my laptop shut, my heart racing. I could feel the blood draining from my face, my stomach knotting with fear. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just some prank. People on the internet do this shit all the time to scare random strangers. But this felt different. The way they talked about me. It felt too personal. I stood up, pacing my room, trying to shake off the creeping sense of dread. I glanced out the window. It was dark, no sign of anyone. Just the typical suburban street, quiet and still. But something felt off, like someone was watching. I grabbed my phone and dialed my friend Jason. He was the tech-savvy one in our group, always talking about cybersecurity and stuff. Maybe he could help. "Dude, you still up?" I asked when he picked up. "Yeah, what's up?" he replied, half asleep. "I did something stupid." "What else is new?" he laughed. "No, seriously. I went on the dark web and..." "Wait, hold up. You did what?" "I just wanted to check it out, okay? But now shit's gotten weird. Someone posted my name, my picture, from outside my fucking house." There was a pause on the other end. "Are you serious?" "I wouldn't joke about this, man." "All right. First you need to chill. It's probably just some assholes trolling you. But just in case, turn off your Wi-Fi, delete your browsing history, and for the love of God, don't go back on there. I'll check it out on my end, see if I can figure out how they got your info." I did what he said, though my hands were shaking the entire time. Jason tried to reassure me, but it didn't help. Not really. The damage was already done. Those people knew who I was. They had a picture of me. What if they had more? What if they had my address? I barely slept that night. Every little sound made me jump. I kept my bedroom light on, the curtains drawn tight. It was ridiculous, I know, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was out there, watching, waiting. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing like crazy. Messages from Jason. I opened them and felt my stomach drop. "Dude, you need to leave your house. Now." "What the hell are you talking about?" I typed back, my hands trembling. He sent me a screenshot of the chat. It was worse than before. They were planning something specific. There were mentions of my address now, and the time they'd pay me a visit. I felt sick. "Get out. Now." Jason texted again, but it was too late. I heard the knock at the door. 3 slow, deliberate taps. I froze. Then my phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unknown number. "We're here." It took every ounce of courage I had to peek through the peephole. What I saw on the other side made my blood run cold. 4 men stood on my porch dressed in black, their faces covered with masks. They weren't just standing there. They were staring directly at the peephole like they knew I was watching. One of them raised his hand, slowly dragging a finger across his throat. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't just internet trolls. They were real, and they were here for me. I ran to the back door, every instinct screaming at me to get out. But before I could make it, I heard the front door creak open. They were inside. I couldn't breathe. My mind was spinning in a panic. They were inside my house, and I didn't have time to think or come up with a plan. All I knew was that I had to get out, and fast. I darted for the back door, but my foot caught on the edge of a chair, sending me sprawling onto the kitchen floor. The sound echoed through the house, louder than anything I'd ever heard. It was like a signal. My blood froze as I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate footsteps, coming down the hallway toward me. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the first thing I could find, a kitchen knife. I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I wasn't a fighter, and these guys looked like they meant business. I could hear their breathing low and steady, like they weren't in any rush. They knew they had me trapped. I had a split second to make a decision, fight or hide. There was no way I could take all 4 of them. I dashed into the pantry, pulling the door shut as quietly as I could. The darkness swallowed me, but I could hear them now. They were in the kitchen, their footsteps heavy against the tile floor. One of them chuckled under his breath, this low, sick laugh that made my skin crawl. come out, wherever you are," one of them said in a sing-song voice. It was the kind of voice you'd use to taunt a child, to break them down slowly. I gripped the knife tighter, my hands slick with sweat. I was trying to steady my breathing, but it wasn't working. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air, and every shallow breath felt like it was giving me away. I pressed myself further into the corner, behind the shelves, praying they wouldn't find me. The pantry door creaked open, and I could see the faint outline of one of them standing in the doorway. He was tall, much taller than me, and the way he just stood there, silent, scanning the room, sent a wave of terror through me. I knew if I made the smallest sound, I was done for. The guy stepped into the pantry, his shoes crunching on something on the floor. He was close, too close. I could hear the leather of his gloves squeaking as he adjusted his grip on whatever weapon he was holding. I couldn't see it clearly, but I knew it wasn't good. My heart was pounding so hard I thought they could hear it. The guy stopped, inches from where I was hiding, and for a second I swore he could see me. I could smell him, this mix of sweat and cigarette smoke and something else. Something metallic. Blood? No. I couldn't think about that. Not now. He leaned down, his head tilting slightly like he was listening for something. His mask reflected the faint light coming from the kitchen, but I couldn't see his eyes. It was just this blank, expressionless face, staring into the dark, searching.
My grip on the knife tightened until my knuckles ached. If he saw me, I'd have to use it. I didn't want to. I'd never stabbed anyone before, never even been in a real fight. But it was him or me.
Then, just as suddenly as he'd appeared, he turned and walked out of the pantry. The door clicked shut behind him, and I exhaled slowly, barely daring to believe it. I waited, straining to hear their movements. They were talking to each other now, in low voices. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but the tone was casual, like this was just another night for them. Another fucking hunt. I stayed hidden for what felt like hours. My legs cramped from being hunched in the corner, but I couldn't risk moving. The house was eerily silent. No more footsteps, no more talking. Just this heavy, suffocating quiet that made me wonder if they were still there, or if they were waiting for me to make a move. I knew I couldn't stay in the pantry forever. Sooner or later, they'd find me, or worse, they'd grow bored and start tearing the place apart. My phone was still in my pocket, but there was no way I could call the police. What was I supposed to say? That I fucked around on the dark web, and now 4 masked psychos were hunting me down. Even if they believed me, would they get here in time? I had to move. Slowly, painfully, I inched toward the door. My fingers trembled as I turned the knob, praying it wouldn't squeak. I peeked through the crack, and the kitchen was empty. No sign of them. But I wasn't stupid. They were still here. I could feel it, like a weight pressing down on my chest. I slipped out of the pantry, crouching low, listening for any sign of movement. My only chance was to make it to the front door and bolt. I had to get out, find Jason, figure out what the hell was happening. But just as I made it to the living room, I froze. They were standing by the front door, all 4 of them, like they'd been waiting for me. My stomach lurched as I realized I had walked right into their trap. The one in the front, the tallest, took a step forward, his mask glinting in the dim light. "You really shouldn't have fucked with us," he said, his voice calm, almost friendly. It was the voice of someone who knew he had all the power. "Now, you're gonna learn what happens to people like you." I backed up, the knife trembling in my hand. "I don't know what you want from me," I said, my voice cracking. "Just take whatever you want and leave me alone." The second guy laughed, a low, sickening sound. "It's not about what we want, it's about what we can take. And right now, we're going to take a little more than you bargained for." Panic surged through me, my thoughts racing. I couldn't fight them, I couldn't outrun them. But I had no choice. I lunged at the nearest one, slashing with the knife. I barely grazed him before he grabbed my wrist and twisted hard. The pain shot through my arm as the knife clattered to the floor. He shoved me back and I slammed into the wall, the wind knocked out of me. The others moved in, surrounding me like predators closing in on a wounded animal. I thought about screaming, but what good would that do? My neighbors were too far away, and even if someone heard, it'd be too late. One of them grabbed me by the collar and slammed me against the wall, pinning me there. His face was inches from mine, and through the mask, I could see the twisted grin behind it. "You've made a big fucking mistake," he whispered, his breath hot against my skin. "Now you're gonna pay." The world spun as he shoved me to the ground. I tried to scramble away, but one of them kicked me hard in the ribs, knocking the wind out of me. I curled up, gasping for air, but they didn't stop. They kept kicking, hitting, beating me until I couldn't see straight. I felt blood in my mouth, my vision blurring as pain exploded across my body. And then through the haze, I saw the leader crouch down in front of me, tilting his head like he was studying me. "This is just the beginning," he said softly. "We're not done with you yet." Then, everything went black. When I came to, the first thing I noticed was the pain. It was everywhere, spreading through my ribs, my arms, my face. It was this deep, throbbing ache that made it hard to move, hard to even breathe. My head felt like it had been split open, and when I blinked, everything was blurry. I tried to move, but my body didn't cooperate. Something was wrong. My hands were tied. Panic set in immediately. I jerked against the restraints, but they didn't budge. My wrists were bound tight with zip ties, and every movement just made them dig deeper into my skin. I was lying on the floor, somewhere dark, the air thick with the smell of sweat and mildew. The faint sound of dripping water echoed in the distance. I wasn't in my house anymore. This was someplace else, someplace far worse. I tried to calm down, but my heart was pounding out of control, adrenaline kicking in as the reality of the situation hit me. They had taken me. The bastards from the dark web had actually dragged me out of my own house and brought me here. Wherever here was. The room was dimly lit, barely enough light to make out the concrete walls around me. It looked like some kind of basement or underground bunker. The floor was cold and rough beneath me, and I could feel a slight draft coming from somewhere above. There were no windows, no way to tell how long I'd been out. I heard a creak from behind me, a door opening. Footsteps echoed in the room, slow and deliberate. I forced myself to stay still, listening. I didn't want them to know I was awake just yet. Maybe I could figure something out, some way to escape, though deep down I knew I was fucked. Rise and shine, sweetheart. The voice was close, too close. I flinched instinctively, and my whole body tensed as a hand grabbed my shoulder and roughly rolled me onto my back. I stared up into the face of one of the masked men, his features hidden behind that blank, emotionless mask. The one who had spoken crouched down next to me, tilting his head as he stared. "You've been out for a while," he said, his voice dripping with mock concern. "I was starting to think you wouldn't wake up at all. That would have been a shame, wouldn't it? We're just getting started." I opened my mouth to speak, but my throat was dry, my lips cracked. The words stuck in my throat, fear choking me. "What? What do you want?" I finally managed to croak out, my voice barely above a whisper. The guy laughed, a harsh, grating sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh, it's not about what we want, it's about what you can handle. See, you've been messing around where you shouldn't have, and now you're going to pay for it. It's funny, isn't it? How one stupid little click can change your whole fucking life." He stood up, his boots scraping against the floor as he paced around me. The others were in the room too, standing in the shadows, watching. I could feel their eyes on me, feel the weight of their gaze like predators circling their prey. "Please, I didn't mean anything by it. I didn't do anything wrong." My voice cracked, tears welling up as I struggled to sit up, my hands still bound behind me. "That's the thing, though," another voice said from the shadows. "It's not about what you meant to do. It's about what you did. You stepped into our world, and once you're in, you don't just get to walk away." My pulse quickened, my mind racing. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Shit like this doesn't happen in real life. But the pain, the fear, the cold concrete beneath me, they were all too real. I wasn't waking up from this nightmare. The leader, the one who had been pacing, crouched down again, getting right in my face. I could see his eyes behind the mask now, cold, empty, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. "We're going to play a little game," he said, his voice calm, almost soothing. "It's simple, really. You answer our questions and we decide if you live or die. Fair enough, right?" I didn't respond. My throat was too tight, the panic rising like a wave threatening to swallow me whole. He reached behind him and pulled something out of his pocket, a knife. It wasn't huge, but it was sharp enough, the blade glinting in the dim light as he twirled it between his fingers. "First question," he said, dragging the tip of the knife lightly across my cheek, just enough to let me feel it. "Why were you on the dark web? What were you looking for?" I was just curious," I stammered, my body trembling uncontrollably. "I didn't mean to find that chat room. It was a mistake. I swear, I didn't do anything." The knife pressed a little harder against my skin, and I winced as it nicked me, a small bead of blood trickling down my face. "Curiosity's a dangerous thing," he muttered, leaning in closer. "You should have stayed away, but now you're here, and we're not done with you." I wanted to scream, to beg for mercy, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. These people, they weren't human. They didn't care. They just wanted to see me suffer, to see how far they could push me before I broke. He stood up again, motioning to the others. They moved forward, their boots echoing on the concrete as they dragged me to my feet. My legs were too weak to stand, and I collapsed against them, the zip ties biting into my wrists as they pulled me upright. "Time to take a walk," one of them growled, shoving me forward. My knees buckled, and I stumbled, barely able to keep my balance as they pushed me toward the door. I had no idea where they were taking me, but every step felt like a march toward my own death. My heart was racing, my head spinning as they dragged me down a long, narrow hallway. It was cold, damp, the air thick with the smell of mold and decay. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but I knew it was pointless. They had all the power. I was just their plaything now. We reached a heavy metal door at the end of the hall. One of them unlocked it with a loud clank, and the door swung open with a creak. They shoved me inside, and I stumbled, falling to my knees on the cold concrete. My entire body went cold when he said ritual. Whatever sick game they were playing, this was no longer about just torturing me for fun. There was something deeper, darker, and far more twisted than I had imagined. I felt like I was teetering on the edge of something I couldn't comprehend. And the worst part, they had planned this. From the moment I clicked into that chat room, from the moment my name appeared on that list, I was already marked. The guy with the notebook walked around me slowly, dragging his fingers across the back of the chair as he circled like a predator. The other three stood in the corners of the room, watching silently. The tension in the air was suffocating. I felt like I was drowning in it. "You don't get it yet, do you?" the leader asked, his voice calm, almost friendly. "This isn't about you personally. Not really. You were just the perfect candidate. The ritual needs someone curious, someone willing to dig too deep, and you did exactly that." "What the fuck are you talking about? Ritual? What is this?" I croaked, struggling to get the words out. My throat felt raw, my voice hoarse from the pain and fear. He chuckled under his breath, a sound that made my stomach churn. "You stumbled into something ancient, something bigger than you could ever understand. We don't just mess with random people, we choose carefully, and once you're chosen, you don't get to leave." I was shaking uncontrollably now, my body reacting to the sheer terror that was building in my chest. This wasn't just a kidnapping anymore. It was something far more sinister. They had plans for me. Plans. And I had no idea how bad it was going to get. "You see these symbols?" He gestured around the room, his gloved hand pointing to the blood-painted walls. "These aren't just for show. Each one binds you. Every part of this process, every scream, every drop of blood, it all serves a purpose. You're not just a victim, you're a key." A key? What the hell did that even mean? My mind raced, trying to piece together the sick puzzle they were laying out in front of me, but it didn't make sense. It was like being trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from, and the rules didn't apply anymore. "You're fucking insane," I spat, the fear boiling over into anger. "This is some twisted joke, right? You think this is funny?" The leader leaned down, so his masked face was inches from mine. I could smell his breath now, foul and hot like rot. "It's not a joke, and you'll understand soon enough. The others we've taken, they didn't last as long as you, but you've got potential. That's why we're giving you a chance." My stomach dropped. "A chance for what?" He straightened up and motioned to one of the others. The guy stepped forward carrying a black cloth bag. My heart sank. I knew whatever was in that bag wasn't good. It was heavy, the weight of it obvious as the guy set it down on the ground in front of me. The leader knelt down and unzipped the bag slowly, taking his time, like he wanted to savor the moment. My breathing hitched as I watched him pull out a video camera. "What the fuck?" I muttered, my voice trembling. "You're going to film this? What is this, some kind of snuff movie?" The leader laughed again. No, this is for you. We want you to see yourself, to see what you'll become." He set the camera on a tripod directly in front of me, pointing it right at my face. The red recording light blinked on, a small, haunting dot in the darkness of the room. "You're going to want to remember every second of this." The guy who had set up the camera disappeared into the corner again and came back holding something else. I squinted, trying to make it out, but when he stepped into the dim light, my blood ran cold. It was a syringe. No, 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 no. I started to struggle, pulling at the zip ties binding me to the chair, but it was no use. They were too tight. The more I pulled, the deeper they cut into my skin, until I felt warm blood trickling down my wrists. The guy held the syringe up, tapping it a few times like some fucked-up doctor about to give me an injection. The liquid inside was thick, dark, almost black. It didn't look like anything I'd ever seen before. This wasn't a drug. This was something else. "This is where it starts," the leader said, his voice low, filled with anticipation. "This is what will open the door." "What the fuck are you doing to me?" I screamed, thrashing against the chair. But the others held me down, their grips like iron. The syringe hovered inches from my arm, the needle glinting in the dim light. "Just relax," the leader whispered. "It'll be over soon." The needle pierced my skin. It wasn't like any injection I'd ever had before. It burned, immediately, intensely. The liquid felt like fire coursing through my veins, spreading up my arm, through my chest, into my head. I screamed, but the sound barely registered. All I could focus on was the pain, this searing, unbearable pain that made my vision blur and my head spin. My skin felt like it was crawling, like something was moving beneath it, writhing, twisting. I tried to look down at my arm, but I couldn't focus. My heart was pounding so fast, I thought it was going to explode. And then the hallucinations started. At first, it was just shadows, dark shapes moving in the corners of the room. I blinked, trying to clear my vision, but they were still there, creeping closer. The walls seemed to pulse, the symbols painted in blood glowing faintly, like they were alive. I could hear whispers, low, guttural voices that I couldn't understand, but they filled my head, drowning out everything else. The room began to spin, the shadows growing larger, darker, until they swallowed everything. My body felt weightless, like I was floating, detached from reality, but the pain was still there, sharp and agonizing, ripping through me with every breath. And then, through the haze, I saw it. A figure, standing in the corner of the room. At first, I thought it was one of the men, but this was different. It was taller, impossibly tall, its body twisted and unnatural, with long, spindly limbs and glowing red eyes. It didn't belong here. It wasn't human. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and I realized they were coming from it. The figure moved toward me, its movement slow and deliberate, like it had all the time in the world. I tried to scream, to move, but my body wouldn't listen. I was frozen, paralyzed by the drug, by the pain, by the terror coursing through me. It stopped in front of me, towering over me, its face hidden in shadow, but I could feel its gaze. It was looking at me, through me, into me. And then it spoke. "You are the key." The voice wasn't human. It was deep, echoing, like it came from somewhere far away, somewhere dark. The words reverberated through my mind, filling me with a sense of dread so profound, I thought I was going to pass out. "You will open the door," it said again, its voice growing louder, more insistent, "and you will let us in." I tried to scream, to fight, but it was no use. The figure reached out, its long clawed hand resting on my chest. The touch was cold, impossibly cold, and I felt my heart stutter in my chest. And then everything went black. When I woke up, I wasn't in the chair anymore. The restraints were gone, and the cold concrete floor felt damp against my skin. My whole body throbbed with pain, but the worst part was the fog. My mind felt scrambled, disoriented, like I'd been ripped out of one reality and thrown into another. I blinked, trying to focus, but the room was different now. The walls were no longer covered in those blood-painted symbols.
They were slick with some kind of black, pulsating substance. It looked alive, like it was breathing. Every few seconds, the walls would contract and expand, like the room itself was part of something organic, something alive. I tried to sit up, but my muscles refused to cooperate. The fire from the syringe was still burning inside me, twisting through my veins like poison. My vision swam as I forced myself onto my hands and knees, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Where the fuck am I? I whispered to myself. But the room didn't answer. It was silent, too silent, except for that faint squelching sound coming from the walls. That's when I noticed I wasn't alone. The men, the ones who had taken me, were standing in the corners of the room, their masks still on, but something was wrong. They weren't moving. They were just standing there, unnaturally still, like statues. I blinked, trying to clear the haze in my mind, and that's when I saw it. They were fused to the walls. Their bodies, twisted and contorted, were half submerged in that black, pulsating substance. Their arms and legs were grotesquely bent, their faces frozen in expressions of pure terror, even behind the masks. It looked like they'd been absorbed into the walls, like the room had eaten them. I gagged, bile rising in my throat as I scrambled backward, slipping on the slick floor. My heart was pounding in my ears, my chest tightening with every breath. This wasn't just some basement. This wasn't a place at all. This was something else entirely. Something I didn't understand. I looked around, desperate for an escape, but there were no doors, no windows. Just the pulsating black walls and those twisted bodies embedded in them. And then I heard it. That same voice. The one from the figure. Deep, echoing, reverberating through the room like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. You opened the door. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing at the sound. My mind flashed back to the syringe, the pain, the hallucinations, or what I thought were hallucinations. The figure, the ritual, the symbols. It all clicked into place with a sickening realization.
The room was small, barely big enough to stand in. There was a single chair in the center, and the walls were covered in strange symbols, painted in what looked like blood. My stomach turned at the sight of it, the realization sinking in. This wasn't just some random torture chamber. This was something else, something darker, something ritualistic. They forced me into the chair, binding my arms to the sides, the zip ties cutting into my skin. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. This wasn't just about revenge. There was something else going on here, something far more twisted than I could have imagined. The leader stood in front of me, his mask still on, but I could feel his eyes boring into me. He held up a small black notebook and began flipping through the pages, humming softly to himself. "We've been watching you for a while," he said, not bothering to look up from the notebook. "You thought this was just some accident, some random mistake, but no, you were chosen. You're part of something much bigger now." My mouth went dry. "Chosen? For what?" He snapped the notebook shut and looked at me, his eyes gleaming behind the mask. "To play your part in the ritual," he said simply. "And trust me, it's not going to end well for you." This wasn't just torture. This wasn't just a twisted game. I had been used, sacrificed. "You will let us in." I looked down at my arms, my skin still burning from the injection. My veins were black now, the same black as the walls, spreading beneath my skin like ink. My body was changing. I could feel it, my muscles twitching, my bones aching, like something inside me was trying to break free. "No, no, no, no," I muttered, shaking my head, trying to fight the rising panic. This couldn't be happening. I wasn't one of them. I wasn't part of this. I just wanted to explore the dark web. I didn't sign up for this fucked up ritual. But the voice didn't care. "You are the key," it said again, louder this time, more forceful. "You will let us in." I felt my body convulse, the black veins spreading faster now, crawling up my arms, across my chest, up my neck. I screamed, grabbing at my skin, trying to rip it off, but it was no use. Whatever they had injected me with was taking over, consuming me from the inside out. The walls began to shake, the pulsating rhythm growing louder, more intense. I could hear the whispers again, those low, guttural voices, but now they were coming from inside my head, filling my mind with 1,000 different thoughts, none of them mine. The room started to bend, twist, like reality itself was warping around me. The black substance on the walls slithered toward me, moving like liquid coiling around my legs, pulling me down. I tried to fight it, but my body wouldn't listen. I was too weak, too far gone. And then I saw it. The figure, the same one from before, appeared in front of me, rising out of the darkness. Its glowing red eyes locked onto mine, and I felt something cold settle over me. It reached out with one of its long, clawed hands, placing it on my chest, just like before. "You are the door," it whispered. "And now, we will come through." My body jerked violently as a searing pain shot through my chest. I gasped, my vision blurring as the figure pressed harder, its hand sinking into my skin, into me. I could feel it, them, pouring into me, flooding my body with darkness, with something ancient, something evil. I screamed, but it was cut short as the room seemed to implode around me, collapsing in on itself. The walls, the bodies, the black substance, it all merged together, swirling into a vortex of shadow and pain, pulling me into it, dragging me down into the abyss. My mind fractured. I wasn't me anymore. I wasn't anything. I was a vessel, a conduit for something far beyond human comprehension. I could feel them inside me, crawling, writhing, filling every inch of my being. Their whispers became screams, deafening, overwhelming, until I thought I would lose my mind. And then, everything stopped. I was lying on the floor of my own house, the familiar scent of my living room filling the air. The sudden normalcy of it all was jarring, disorienting. I sat up slowly, my body shaking, my skin slick with sweat. I looked down at my arms, no black veins. No signs of the nightmare I had just lived through. For a moment, I thought it was over. Maybe I had blacked out. Maybe it was all some sick hallucination. But then, my phone buzzed. I reached for it, my hands trembling as I unlocked the screen. There was a message from an unknown number. "We're inside now, thank you." I dropped the phone, my stomach twisting with horror, and then I heard it. A knock at the door.